Cool. Welcome to another Ask Us Anything. And I love getting the gang together and sharing ideas and answering questions. And today we're going to dive into protein leverage and, by extension, nutrient leverage, which is my little passion project. I think it's sort of my magnum opus that I think is potentially the biggest contribution to my engineering approach to nutrition. And Laurie was saying how much she loved this image that's sort of an engineering concept to show leverage. And Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough, I can move the world." And the protein leverage concept is sort of a little bit esoteric, but we're going to go through and show you what it means. But just to simplify it, it's a small change in protein can make a massive change in your carbon fat intake. And that has been what's happened over the last, say, 50 years in our food environment. Protein availability has come down. We've tried to make food just a little bit more cheaper, a little bit more profitable, a little bit less nutritious, a little bit less protein, and we all end up eating more. And that's what Rubbenheimer and Simpson showed. So this was kicked off with a question from Ori Wells in our community, who said, "Are there any specific hypotheses focusing on vitamins and minerals in the same way as the protein leverage hypothesis explains protein consumption?" I went, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, hell yeah, that's my gig." So excited to talk about it, and I've done this is totally my wheelhouse and my passion. So to lay the foundation, these guys, David Robbenheimer on the right and Stephen Simpson on the left, came up with the protein leverage hypothesis and published a paper back in 2005. I interviewed them a couple of years ago, and I still keep in contact. David shot me an email a couple of weeks ago and said, "Hey, I'm speaking in the States. Can I use one of your images? It shows what we want to show, but a little bit more specifically." So I've taken this concept and went, there's gold here. I'm going to keep on digging, just not just protein, but further beyond. Um, but these guys, the entomologists, and we were saying before, when they published the protein leverage paper in 2005, the reviewers sat on it because they read it and went, they're right, but I can't believe they're right. I can't believe these bug guys who study insects. They were studying crickets and realized that every cricket would seek out enough protein and then stop eating. And if they didn't get enough protein, they'd actually eat the cricket in front of them. And then they looked at all sorts of different animals in the animal kingdom and then extended it to humans as well, because we live in an environment where we need to get the food, the nutrients that we need to get. So we need to balance nutrients and energy. And that's what this image showed. If it doesn't make sense to you initially, it didn't make sense to me initially either. But what it shows is that we always try to balance our intake of protein versus non-protein energy. So protein is like the building blocks of our body, that we need enough protein to get by in the day, to build our muscles if we're lifting, if we need to repair our bodies. We need enough protein. We also need enough energy from carbs and fat to move around. So we're always trying to find that perfect balance. And say you're like this arrow here, say you eat a donut, you go, "Oh, that was yummy." But eventually you get bored of the donuts and you'll come back towards eating more protein, and then you'll eat some energy from carbs or fat, and then you'll gravitate back to the protein. And this happens all completely subconsciously, that we don't really understand. But imagine you go into the shops, you go to the dairy section, the veggie section, and whatever different sections, you're foraging around your environment. And before we had supermarkets, we would have had the same sort of approach, that we need to forage for, these foods to give us certain nutrients and these other foods that give us other nutrients. And most traditional tribes, hunter-gatherers, had a mixed diet, a very widely varied diet, and we always adapted to our environment based on the situation. So any questions or comments or before I keep on rocking on with the slides? Oh, Laurie's cracked in the
Kathy
actual
wants to
reference.
ask a question.
Kathy's waving madly.
She's just going to need to unmute there, and then we can hear her. She's nodding. Yes, she's working on it. She's working on it.
First word.
All right. All right. I always got to be the strange person here. Yeah, I'm driving, of course. I was making a turn. Figured I wouldn't run into the house. I'd just go ahead and whatever. Anyway, here's my question. Of course, I'm always the one that's going to be, I'm not going to say the word objective, but just trying to understand.
Yep.
So, and I have been following long enough that I have seen your interview with Robbenheimer and Simpson.
Very good. Yeah.
And but I'm not an insect. That's the part that throws me off, that I'm not anything like an insect and they're not built like me. Not that I don't believe their, findings, but do you have any insight for me in the comparison? Because I don't look at myself as an animal or an insect at all. I really do distinguish myself to be completely human, which I look at
Yep.
that as different. Maybe everybody doesn't, but do you have any input on that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. What I found mind blowing is they looked at even like slime and it moved towards the protein to get the protein it needed, and then moved over to get the sugar. So every organism, I mean, we're all organisms. We have similar biology, depending on your belief of how we got here and the context, but every organism needs enough nutrients versus energy, and we're always trying to balance that, whether we're pond slime, a a monkey or a human. We're all trying to balance that. And humans have got this conscious mind that we think we're in control, but there's a lot going on below the surface. Like Kathy knows she shouldn't eat X, Y, Z, but there's always something that she gravitates to, that, so, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't have eaten that much of that food. But that's your inbuilt amygdala, your survival instinct trying to get you to stay alive. And if we were fully in control with our willpower to control everything we ate, we'd all be lean and shredded, and some of us would actually die of starvation. And now we're using drugs to override that innate craving for nutrients artificially, which I think is a bit of a dire issue. So yeah, the reality is we all seek out what we need in our environment, subconsciously. How'd I
The
do,
thing
Kath?
I have, the
Oh,
thing
Laurie.
I have tried to manage myself, that drive to seek out things by reminding myself that I've got, two energy sources, but I got these five other nutrients that are, if I can take care of these five,
Yep,
then I don't have to rely so much on these two. So these five are the protein and vitamins and minerals and fiber and
yep,
hydration. So I
yep,
need those things
yep,
to focus on them. And then the two energy sources that are the other part of the whole seven nutrients
yep,
are the fats and the carbs.
yeah,
But they can sink me because they're energy sources.
yeah,
So I need to focus on these five that don't necessarily have a lot of the energy in them. That's how I
yeah.
think of it. Is that sensible?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And just like protein with some of the other nutrients, or really all of them to some extent, but statistically, I'll show you later, there are a short list that we do definitely seek out if we're in an environment where I've sometimes talked about summer and winter and a bear preparing for hibernation. If we're in an environment that tells our body winter is coming, and we need to eat up and get fat, then that's what we'll do. And if we surround ourselves with donuts and cookies and chocolate, we won't be able to resist that for long. But if we, like Laurie said, if you start the day with making sure you're getting the protein and the calcium and the potassium and sodium and all the nutrients that you need, then your body can go, oh, I've got enough energy, or maybe I need a little bit more energy, but I won't overdo it.
Kathy's got her hand up again. Go ahead and unmute, Kathy.
Kathy.
Get the brain going, Marty. Hey, wake up,
Hey.
brain. It's Marty. Okay, here is my thought, and you may have said this before, so I'm sorry.
Yep.
I have memory issues. So in my mind, and I'm not going carnivore. I can't. I mean, I'm
Yep.
just no, I can't. But when you eat, I mean, for me, my most of my food is a cow. I mean, yeah. So the cow eats a lot of things that it gets all these
Yep.
nutrients. So I'm getting the nutrients and the protein both, or through the protein. Is that why a person can do pretty well on being a carnivore? Because we need the nutrients. What's
Yeah.
your thought on that?
People do well on carnivore because protein is the number one nutrient that we need that drives satiety. And in our modern environment, we're not getting as much protein. So if you take someone who's protein malnourished or living in a low protein environment and just say eat just steak, they get the protein, they're satiated, they've satisfied the number one critical deficiency and they're satiated. So that it works like magic until it doesn't. And then they start craving calcium and potassium and these other nutrients that, it's highly beneficial for a lot of people, but not necessarily optimal. And I suppose you see the at the other end of the extreme, you see people who go on a whole food plant-based diet, and they're also eliminating all the ultra-processed foods that are designed to hit our bliss point, and they get all the vitamins and minerals. But what if we combined carnivore and pescatarian and the best of both worlds, and plant-based, and we had a wider palette to get the nutrients we need?
Well, I will say one thing, and it's kind of linked to this, is being that I was on a GLP-1 and Ozempic specifically, um, I had trouble. I think I told you I had trouble getting um, the protein in.
Mm. Yeah.
So now
Because it's so
that I'm getting,
satiated already artificially, you don't want more protein
yes,
because it's so satiating. And you were saying you're potentially going for less optimal foods that you could get in and didn't trigger as
yep,
much satiety, which is less nutrient density, less nutrients, and I don't think that's a good long-term
yep.
trajectory.
And it was very similar to having my lab band surgery. I couldn't eat certain things. And so then I could eat bad stuff. So similar, sort of the same way,
Yeah.
but in a different way. So now that I'm eating more protein, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just like I'm the worst client. Okay, I really am. I'm not a good example, but I can be the example of never give up. But I will say this, like right now, I'm getting ready to get out of the car. I've been shopping. I got to go eat, and I got to get in there, and I'm going to grab the cottage cheese.
Yep.
It's really high in protein, and I can get to it pretty quickly instead of
Yep.
getting to a few other items that end up in my house. We won't say who brings them in, but yeah, sometimes I'm guilty, but sometimes they get ordered. But that's just my input, and
Yeah.
how it's just so interesting to me how all that plays, because that protein, just a very small amount, satiated me so much
Yep.
with the GLP-1. I
You
just,
couldn't eat it
I,
when you're on the drug.
I
Mm.
wanted to, but I just felt like I was going to throw up
So
to be,
interestingly,
to,
you just described your subconscious amygdala driving you to do different things that weren't conscious choices, and you were saying, I'm not an animal, I'm not a bug, but you similarly are subconsciously seeking out things that ensure your survival. And in an environment where you've got protein first, nutrients first, you're able to satisfy your appetite more efficiently, more effectively, with less energy without the drugs. Now we're
right.
all turning to
Yep.
drugs without
Yep.
actually getting the nutrients we need, and that scares me long term. If people are going to be, yeah, yeah, you can take this drug, we'll fund it. It costs a lot of money. You have to be on it for the rest of your life. And what happens 20 years down the track when people have turned off their biological cravings for nutrients that they need because the body
Yeah.
knows what it needs to survive in our environment. Really, we've changed our environment. And I'll jump to that slide to show you how it has changed. You can see in the Great Depression, protein dropped back in the 1930s. So this is protein percentage versus time. I pulled out data from the USDA website. We got poor and couldn't afford protein, but we couldn't afford food either. So didn't make us obese back then. And then really up until about 71, protein increased. Things were good. And then 71, Vietnam, America came off the gold standard. Everything became more expensive. People started to make things for profit as the primary motive, and the protein percentage in our diet dropped from 13% to 11.5%. And that doesn't sound like a lot. People go, "Oh, you're crazy. That's not a big drop." But remember the whole protein leverage concept that a little change in protein changes how much we eat and drives obesity. So that's sort of the protein leverage concept in history of the American diet, that as protein percentage has dropped, as we've added refined sugars, refined grains, industrial vegetable oils that are just nutrient poor, have no protein, have no vitamins, have no minerals, to make really cheap and addictive foods, we've got obese, we've eaten more, and things go up. So that's fascinating. This is an image I shared last week, I think, that just shows our 900,000 days of food data, that this red mountaintop here is the point where we eat the most, which is lower protein. So this is maximum protein and in between the fat and carb extent. So that it just, whether it's insects or Rahman Harman's studies or our data, this is Harvard's data, and Ted made this amazing chart. We eat the most when we're in this addictive bliss point, maximum point. And what we do in our programs is guide you to move away from that, change your environment so you can avoid overeating. And I keep showing this protein versus energy chart. This is what.
Marty,
Yo, got another question?
just before you go into that chart, the
Yep.
protein energy chart.
Yep.
So here's the protein percentage issue. Leslie's raising it. She's saying, is that then the benefit of aiming for protein percentage as opposed to stuffing ourselves with trying to reach actual grams of protein per meal? This is your opportunity to help with that issue.
Yeah. I'll jump to the next slide after that just to illustrate. If there's high protein foods, I've taken all the data we've got and looked at the protein grams per typical serving, and say ribeye fillet will get 69 grams, which is awesome. Massive amount of protein per 200 grams served, which is the typical amount people eat when they eat a ribeye steak. But you're also going to get a ton of fat with that. So it's not an efficient way to get your protein compared to egg white and chicken breast and shrimp and low fat sirloin steak and high protein, low fat Greek yogurt and salmon and fat trimmed ribeye, which have much higher protein percentage. So if just getting the protein in grams is important, and I'll go back to the slide before in a second, because you need the minimum amount. But once you've got the minimum amount, you go, well, how do I get the minimum amount of protein without excess energy? And if I go back to the previous slide,
So wait, go back to the food one, because just so you can slow down enough here for some of the simpler minded ones, because on these two charts, two images, you've got the ribeye that you started with on the left. You've also got the ribeye showing on the right. So if we were only focusing on, okay, that ribeye on the left image, we see 69 grams of protein. We could think, great, that's getting me up close to my total, towards my total. But if you look then on the image on the right, where the ribeye is, it's only giving you the 63%
Yeah,
protein.
if you
Is
choose
that not a
the if you
good
choose the
example?
if you choose the fat trimmed ribeye, you can get like steak is a really can be a really high protein percentage food as long as they're not eating like soaking ham. But if you choose the fattiest cut of bacon, you're not going to have as high a protein percent. So it's about making the right food choices to get the protein you need without the energy you don't if you already have excess energy stored on your body. So to show you this chart, Robin Harmon Simpson talked about the protein leverage, but then I kept seeing the data again and again that it's not linear. It's not just if you eat 0% protein, you'll eat more. You actually get bored of that. You don't want to eat that food. It doesn't taste good because it doesn't have protein. And you see this little drop off over on the left here that if you're, let's say you only had apples to eat or plain sugar or plain flour or plain oil, you just, nobody wants to eat that. They just go, ew, if that's all I've got to eat, I'm not going to keep on eating. So our appetite drags us to about 12% protein, which aligns with maximum energy intake. And that's perfect if you're a bear preparing for winter hibernation. And that's basically the modern food environment that food manufacturers have designed for us to maximize profit, maximize intake at the expense of our waste and our wallet. So what we do in our programs is guide you to increase your protein percentage, which enables you to get the protein you need with less energy, and will sort of push you to a optimal nutrient intake of around 40, and some people get to 50. And it's I'll show you this chart here that shows that not many people get well over 40, 50, 60 is really, really hard to do. We all gravitate like a spring back to that maximum intake, that bliss point that aligns with maximum intake. So it's just crazy how strong our appetite for protein is when you see it in that way. This is all our data, and everybody gravitates to that perfect point. And it takes you need to intentionally change your food environment to get up to a higher protein percentage down here. Does that help, Laurie? Anybody got any
It
questions on
does.
that?
And Leslie asked a clarifying question.
Yep.
She said, are those protein-rich foods the same serving size on those two
No,
images?
no, but you'll get a lot less energy from those protein-rich foods. You could eat, maybe 500 calories easily of a fatty sirloin steak, but if you try to eat egg whites, you'll be full on. You won't be able to eat more than 150 calories because it's just like, well, this is so filling, and the egg white is a massive amount of food, but you just can't get through much of it. We don't want you to live on egg white alone, but that's just an extreme example of those sort of foods fill you up. They hit sensory specific satiety where it's like, yeah, I've got all the protein I need. I can't store any more protein, so let's stop eating that, and we're satisfied because we've got that protein.
Okay, and Kathy Waitman, if you unmute, you've got a question. I can see your hand up.
I do.
And, well,
Sorry,
no,
sorry.
Kathy Whiteman.
Wait a
And
minute.
then,
Okay.
and then you can come in, Kathy Bostwick.
Okay, this is just a comment of something
Yep.
that I don't have time to look up, but I saw somewhere that like umami flavoring, which
Mm.
might be an MSG and other things, like
Yep.
almost fakes your brain out and makes you think you've had protein.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, go on.
the article that I pulled up just now was acting like it was almost a tool. Have some chicken broth with MSG in it first, and then you can control your eating. And I'm like, you know, get rid of the umami shaker that I have for, mushrooms stuff so that you can eat the protein that has nutrients in it.
Yeah, yeah, and Robin Harmon Simpson talk about the umami flavor as a protein decoy that, it's like expensive to actually provide real protein, and we crave it. So what food manufacturers do, they add fake protein taste with the MSG to food. So it's not that MSG is bad because it's a chemical storm. Instead, it really just lies to you. And was it Mark Shaska said the definition of fast food is food that is lying to you. And so many foods in a modern environment are lying to us. They're saying, I'm colored, I'm red, I'm this crazy flavor. I must contain nutrients, and it's really just lying because it doesn't actually contain the nutrients that the tastes, the artificial tastes tell us they are, but they don't actually contain those nutrients. So that's a great example of umami flavor on chips. We go, oh yeah, we're getting protein from these chips. I'll keep on eating the chips because I'm getting protein. And then you've gone through the whole bag and you've got no protein.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Kathy Bostwick, can you unmute?
Yep. Yep, it's the Kathy Bostwick show. I do apologize, Marty, and you talk and you made me think of something else besides what I'm going to ask.
I've got a few more slides, so you got to let me talk after this, okay?
Okay, I will just do this one right now. This is more of a housekeeping thing. So I think I missed like 3 days in a row of putting my food in because of a
Yep.
bad habit. Can I just start that over on Monday and do a week's worth and then get the report from you versus having plug in what I can remember?
Yeah,
I don't.
just get me your data and I'll run it. Lots of people are
It'll,
getting really amazing scores, and yeah, when you're ready, when you got 7 days, shoot me a message
okay,
and I'll run your
okay.
report. Show
All
you how
right.
to
I raise my
keep
hand
tweaking
again after
things
you're
up.
done. All right, thank you.
Cool. Okay, so the question from Ori initially was, is there anything beyond just protein leverage? And there's been a lot of talk of fat, sugar, salt as the the bliss points, and since the 70s, they've really understood that it's not just one nutrient, there's multiple nutrients, there's multiple flavors. And if you can nail those multiple flavors in a food, you maximize sales. And you see this one for sugar. If, we all know that sugar is sort of bad for us, and high sugar things we struggle to stop eating. But there's sort of a Goldilocks zone you see on the other side here, that if you only had hard candy or a bowl of sugar or whatever, you wouldn't keep eating that forever. You'd get to a point where it tastes sickly sweet because you've had enough sugar. And if, say, you're making a tea or a coffee and you usually have half a teaspoon of sugar in it, and you accidentally put 3 tablespoons of sugar in it, you go, ew, that tastes sickly sweet. I'm going to eat less of it. So there's this perfect bliss point in the middle where something tastes just right to us of about 20% sugar. Kids have a higher bliss point. Adults have a lower bliss point. I think kids are craving more fast-acting energy so they can run around. But there's a distinct bliss point for sugar. And then you see the same thing for sodium. We always manage to get enough sodium just because it's such a critical nutrient. And interestingly, the adequate intake, the minimum that is often recommended, particularly for people with high blood pressure, will leave you at a point where chips and salty things and those, bad things that have been laced with a ton of sodium, extra salt, will actually become more seductive. So, what we do in our micros class is show you how to get enough sodium without it tasting awful because you've over added the salt. And then if you're in an energy deficit, you'll still get enough sodium to prevent those cravings that often lead to overeating and rebound binging. Any questions on that before I keep on rocking on? Does Harry have a question? Harry said, by putting aside the question of whether an egg white is diet optimal, does it even work for weight loss? Because you'd be too full and simultaneously too hungry. That's a good point. What Harry's getting at is when people hear about this protein leverage thing, or Ted Naiman was talking a lot about protein to energy ratio a while ago, and people would go from 15% to I'm just going to eat chicken breast and egg whites, and oh, I'm hungry. What's up with this? This was meant to be magical. But the reality is you're eating half as much energy at that point. So you're still gonna you're in a massive energy deficit at that point. So you're gonna have some hunger. And what we've found to work really well is just to nudge people up. So they're at 20% protein, we'll get them to 30% protein. And if they're at 30% protein, we'll get them to 40% protein. But jumping massively just you end up in a massive energy deficit, which is hard to sustain. And there will be some hunger just because you've got such a massive energy deficit. Cool.
Unfortunately, I think so many of us want those fast results, and then we push too hard, and then we have that backlash thing. So just keep reminding us a little bit at a time, a little bit
Yeah.
at a time.
Again and again, and like Kathy Bostwick was saying earlier, we don't think we're animals. We don't think we've got those survival instincts, but we do. And if we push our body with our conscious mind to the point of starvation, it'll fight back. And so that's why most diets fail, because people push too hard, they hit the wall, they don't get the nutrients they need, they don't get they don't get the right balance of protein versus energy, and there's a limit to how much your body can release energy each week. So if you push harder than that, your body will fight back and you'll be face down in the donuts recovering. Did Kathy W have
She
a
did,
question?
she did have her hand up and then it went down, so maybe she changed her mind, or no, her hand's back up again. Kathy, go
And
ahead and unmute.
Kathy.
Whiteman.
Okay. Playing the game of trying to get 100% on the nutrition thing,
Yep.
even, what if scenario, does it ding you a couple of points if you seem like you've met all the categories, but maybe your fat percentage is too high or your something else, or
No,
it should hit 100?
it's just a matter of getting all the nutrients per calorie. It doesn't really matter where those calories come from, fat versus protein, fat versus carbs. I don't let people get down below 20% fat just because it's really challenging to live that way. But other than that, it's just wherever you get your energy and from, and different people find that they get more energy from fat, more energy from carbs. It doesn't really matter. And sometimes it'll actually bump up the carbohydrate target, but that's, non-starchy veggies. If somebody's on a high-fat keto diet, it might say, hey, let's go for more the non-starchy veggies that contain the nutrients you're currently not getting enough of. And yeah, carbs may increase, fat may decrease, but your diet quality score is going through the roof.
Okay, thanks.
Kathy Bostwick has another question.
Full of questions, Kat.
Is Kathy W and Kathy B day?
Kathy B.
All right, here goes. So yesterday I had a very, very physical day, doing physical things more than I was familiar with for several hours without stopping, right?
Yep.
So I went way, way, way too long before I ate.
Yep.
I mean, I was about to die. I mean, I was like, get me out of the cupboard, please. But I didn't. Okay. So I did go and I did have.
Froze. It froze.
Come back, Kathy.
I had a
Come back,
decent meal.
Kathy.
Let me trash. And so my question, can you hear me?
Shoot, Kathy, we're losing you. Can you maybe type it out?
I'll answer the question that I think you're asking, Kath. It's finding the balance between, hey, Kat,
Hello.
your
Hello. Wave if you can
coverage
hear
is
me.
not good. Okay, so I think where Kathy was going there is sometimes we're more active, we'll actually crave more energy, and we're attracted to foods that give us the energy. And when we're less active, we'll be able to survive on more nutrient dense foods. And that's part of the process. And it's really cool to see a number of people in our community boosting their activity, they're getting strong, they're eating more energy, and that's great because it enables them to get more protein, get more nutrients, and with that energy. And yeah, we want you to be strong and resilient and powerful, and not just eat less and less and less. But if you don't choose to be active, then we've got three people walking live as we talk, which is awesome. You will have to dial up that diet quality score even more and more because you're actually burning less energy. So you need to get more protein and nutrients per calorie.
I think you're answering. Can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
Okay, I'm inside the house. Sorry, I was
Good.
in the garage. Yeah, I think you are answering my question, but because I'm so basic, my question was because I didn't have enough, and it was only for a day. I didn't get enough new nutrients. I didn't get enough protein. Is that because my body was yelling, I need all the, I was in pain, a lot of pain, but I
Yep.
totally like crashed, like a plane crashed out of the sky. That was
Yeah.
me. Was that
Yep.
because of not having all those things I'm used to having?
Were you craving um,
I was too
less
dead to
optimal
crave.
foods? Okay.
I was too,
Uh, you,
I,
you,
I was like, to me, it was almost like starving to death, although I hadn't starved. But it was like there was nothing in my body to make me function. That's what I mean.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like not able to function any longer. It was that way because I didn't have all those things I needed. Is that what you would say?
Oh, you probably needed more energy on that day because you were so active and drained all your energy stores more than you used to. But if you were more active on a regular basis, would you'd
Okay, well,
adapt to that.
but why couldn't my body use the protein though if I didn't have enough energy? Could it not
Yeah.
take what I had and use that in place of it?
See, protein is not a great energy source. It's really a building block for your body. If you're absolutely starving and you don't have energy, it can use the muscles on your body and turn that to glucose through gluconeogenesis. But that's a last resort and it's a really inefficient process. So your body doesn't really want to use protein for energy. It wants to get energy from carbs and fat if it can. So that's why you crave the donuts and the pizza and the cake at that point.
Okay. I think you answered it because maybe that's why I felt like I was on fire, literally, like my legs, my feet, everything was
Sounds
just
like you need to
hurting so
rest up,
much.
Kath.
I
Cool.
did. So I'm good today. I'll stop now.
Okay, I'll get on with the slides. Thanks, Kath. So moving on to the part two, we've got through part one, which is the protein, but that was 2005, 20 years ago. Robbenheimer and Simpson came up with the protein leverage hypothesis. Digging into the data, we see the same trends again and again. Calcium, there's a bliss point, which is below the dietary reference intake, which is good. So the dietary reference intake is will get you above the bliss point, but the our optimal nutrient intake packs in more calcium per calorie, which drives satiety. Calcium, talking to when I talked to David Robbenheimer, he said, yeah, there's a really plausible mechanism for calcium being something we crave. And, some people get crazy, pregnant women get crazy cravings, and nutrient deficient people will eat dirt and even chalk if they get desperate enough. And that's got calcium in it. So there's a real plausible mechanism just because calcium makes up after our muscles, the second biggest component of our body, our bones. So sarcopenia, which is muscle loss, is a really big deal, but osteopenia, which is loss of bone mass, is also a big deal in our modern society. So what we do is try to get you in our programs to get more calcium as part of the satiety algorithm to get you to the bliss point. If you're in a low calcium state, if you're not getting enough, if you're not meeting the minimum amount of calcium, then these high calcium foods can be great on the left. But then if you're over fat and want to lose weight and increase satiety, then you want to get the foods that have more calcium per calorie. And that's sort of a different population of foods. And a lot of time non-starchy green veggies contain a ton of calcium. Not all of it may be bioavailable, but low-fat dairy will pack in a ton of calcium. Greek yogurt is a kill punch for that. Again, potassium, we see this distinct bliss point where even everything from Macca's sort of hits that bliss point where things taste just right. And if you tried to have potassium powder, it tastes really bitter and awful. So I think what's happening out here is there's some degree of bitter taste. Just the right amount of potassium will taste good, but if you push it too far, it'll taste bitter. And then if you look at the foods that contain a lot of calcium per serving, the banana and potato and anything fresh really, but then to really pack in more potassium per calorie, you're looking at these potassium-rich foods, which are often the non-starchy green veggies that contain nutrients without a lot of energy. And like someone was saying before, it's that, is carnivore okay? Yeah, it's great because it provides the protein, but then these other foods provide the complementary balance of nutrients. You see the same thing with vitamin B2, which was a massive surprise for me. And the dietary reference intake also aligns with the bliss points. So again, the dietary reference intake, you think you're getting the minimum, you think you're doing great, but it actually aligns with maximum intake, and moving towards optimal will help you eat less. And you think B2, that's crazy, but then you look at the foods that contain more B2 and you go, yeah, I'm not about to overeat kidney or mushrooms or liver or heart or spinach. And these are the foods that contain more of those nutrients. And then I've brought all that together into the Food Addiction-Satiety Index. So it's not just about protein, it's not just about fiber, it's not just about energy density, it's not just about sugar, calcium, potassium, sodium, or vitamin B2. It's about all of these things and how they interact. And what we do in the macros class is focus on protein, which is the ground floor. And then in the micros class, we bring in all the other nutrients as well and show you how to take your current diet and increase the diet quality score.
Marty, I,
This,
I,
Laurie,
Marty,
what have you got?
I would like to bring Beth on here for a second.
Yep.
Beth, if you could unmute, because you were just, before we started recording, Marty had pointed out what you were doing, and then you responded with, you're doing it very simply, because I wanted some practicality. What are you doing? And you said 10 foods. So you've just heard him talk about the calcium and the potassium and stuff, and you're getting these high percentages of quality, right? Diet quality score. Can you address what you're doing in relationship to what Marty just said to make it real practical for everybody?
Well, calcium. I happen right now to be eating pickerel, or walleye, as we call it in Minnesota, which is freshwater white fish. And if you're going to eat white fish and choose cod or sole or whatever, pickerel has this amazing combination of vitamins. And I've been eating it for 2 weeks, pretty much most meals at night, because it's better for my diabetes and my blood sugar then. And I'm getting kind of tired of it. And when Marty did my perfect day, I said, "Oh man, I'm so sick and tired of this pickerel. I got to move on." And when Marty looked at it for me, he said,
It's like,
"Well,
it's really good.
it gives you B1 and it gives you calcium that are hard to get in other places." So, man, I
In
was
your diet.
determined. I was determined. So today I did some research, Marty. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I decided that rapini was going to be the
Oh, yeah.
magical
There
thing.
you go. There you
It's
go.
a leafy green and it's got both thiamine and
Wow.
calcium in it. So bingo. So that's kind of how I approach it, Lori. It's like, give me a challenge. Now, the bigger challenge will be, can I find rapini in Thunder Bay, Ontario, in the middle of the winter? Maybe not. And will I enjoy eating it? Probably not. But that's really how I approach it. It's like, if I don't eat dairy, so I
Yeah.
have to find some
Which makes
calcium.
calcium harder for you.
Exactly. So I really have to search hard for calcium. So I was really on the hunt for it today, and that would replace, if I could get enough of it, which would also be difficult, then I could eat pickerel less often. I don't know
Yeah,
if does that answer your question, Lori?
and most people have a wider variety of foods. They might have 20 or 30 foods, but because Beth is trying to manage her type 1 to the nth degree and really nail that, she's going, I need to know what this food does with my insulin and blood sugars. And most
Right.
people don't get down to that level of finessing. I can bring up your chart just to show people what.
While he's bringing that up, Beth, yes, you did. And then Marty, after you do her chart,
Yep. So this is the food list that Beth is eating with the pickerel. And yeah, all of them are great. I think I said a bit more cabbage, bit more kale, and these change columns just say this food is great, eat a bit more of it. But Beth is she's got pickerel, avocado oil, veal, salmon, anchovy, broccoli,
Veal liver, specifically veal liver.
veal liver. There you
Veal
go.
liver. And
Bonus
I
point.
don't eat broccoli very often, and cabbage as well because they're high, they get me high carbs, high net
Yeah,
carbs. And so
yeah.
I found that arugula and kale and spinach are better.
Yeah, and we got a great diet quality score with 6% net carbs, 12 grams of net carbs a day, which is insane. Bernstein would be proud. And I'll show you as well, Laurie. Beth started with an amazing nutrient fingerprint, and it was just folate, vitamin E, sodium that we needed to boost. And then I shuffled everything around, and it's like, how do we boost those to get them all up to the optimal nutrient intake with a diet quality score of 100%? And that's what this does. But if someone's starting at the very beginning, it just says, well, what are you eating now? And how do we nudge things without having to eat veal liver or anything weird that you're not used to? It's what are you eating now and how do we boost that? So,
Well, veal liver shouldn't have a bad name. It's young beef. It's when you eat the beef liver that you might not enjoy it.
bit
But
of
if you
stronger
can find
taste.
veal liver, it's a milder taste.
And it's interesting. Iron is another food that, iron is another nutrient that's in beef liver. And I think that's why it tastes a bit, it's just got such a strong iron taste that your body says, we don't need that much iron. Too much iron is bad for us. So we're going to stop eating it once we've got a certain amount of iron. And that's sort of the sensory specific satiety that your body goes around and says, I'm going to get my protein, I'm going to get my potassium, I'm going to get my sodium, I'm going to maybe get sugar. There's all these, there's a, just like we talk about the different fuel tanks for fat and carbs in our body. It's like we've got different repositories for vitamins and minerals. And once we get enough of each of those, the body says, I've had enough of eating. I don't need to keep eating. I've got all this fat stored on my body. I can drain that. So that's the game we're playing of, imagine a wild animal foraging around the wild environment, getting a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that. That's what I'm trying to do with the algorithm to show people how to get everything they need to get satiety from the food available in their environment.
Mhm.
okay, Jill, can you unmute? And then Donald will get your question out there too, just a second.
Okay. Oh, Marty, hi.
Jill,
Hello. I noticed on the new ones you don't put vitamin D in the list
uh,
of
ju
yeah, early
just
ones
because
have
it's
D
not
and it doesn't.
tracked well, we don't have
Got
a lot
it.
of great data for it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's and then the other thing is well, I just wondered why you called it food addiction, that circle. Why is it called food addiction?
Um, because the foods that come up with the lowest satiety score look like this. It's like the
Ah,
McDonald's
okay.
menu, and everything on the McDonald's menu has a low satiety score. Big
Hmm.
Mac's got a satiety score of 6, and these are the foods that have been engineered. They're not just created by chefs, they're engineered through, I
Yeah.
don't know, whether it's trial or error or knowing exactly how all those nutrients
You know
enter
what? I saw a
to
program on
make you
telly that
addicted.
they had people in MRI scanners looking at the bits of the brain, the pleasure bits. So they're not even giving them to
Mm,
real people to taste it and say what they feel like. They're looking to see the dopamine and what
yep,
what triggers
yep.
the things that want you to make more. But I didn't really mean that. I meant the graph before that, the wheel one, the wheel.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what that's got to do with food addiction. I think it was a slide before
So yeah, this is the Food
that one.
Addiction-Satiety
Yeah.
Index. So what I've tried to do is put everything on a scale from
Mm.
this is like crack cocaine. This is everything on the McDonald's menu that you just won't stop
Okay, so
eating.
that's what they'll put that in there again, like a fake thing. It lies to the brain to say it's food, but
Yeah.
it really
Yeah.
just makes you want to eat more.
And this wheel just shows the weightings of the different factors that have come up as extremely statistically significant. So protein's a big deal, but sugar has a role, calcium has a role, and you combine all those funky bliss point curves. And if a certain food hits the bliss point concentration of nutrients for B2 and potassium and calcium and sugar and salt and protein, you're going to get that's a best-selling product that you make a ton of money from, and people will feel addicted to it. It's not just the sugar, because people get a dopamine hit
Um,
from the sugar, people get a dopamine hit from the salt, people get a dopamine hit from just enough protein. And
mm,
imagine if you combined all those dopamine hits
yeah,
all at once, what would happen? You'd be addicted.
okay. And then does monosodium glutamate as well when they put it in a Chinese food to make you think you can eat 4 times as much as you really need as well.
Yeah, and that's what we were saying before. It's effectively lying
Yeah,
to you that it contains
yeah.
protein. It tastes
Okay.
like protein, but it doesn't. So you keep on eating that food.
All right. Okay, thank you. It's
Oh,
very
good
useful.
question.
Donald's got a question about being prescribed lansoprazole over the past 15 years, and he's read that this PPI can hinder calcium and vitamin D absorption. Should I be trying to take should should I be trying to take more calcium and vitamin D?
Yeah, definitely, Donald. What you're doing, I think I just did your report this morning. So make sure you prioritize foods that boost your vitamin D and calcium. If your doctor does a test that shows you're low in calcium and D, then it's probably worth supplementing. But what we try to do for most people most of the time is say, let's try and get it from food because your body understands nutrients in the form that, in a complete form rather than just, we're going to take a calcium supplement. Your gut goes, what is this? And it goes straight out. And even worse, calcium supplementation is often shown to be detrimental because it just takes that bolus of calcium and goes into, it's more likely to go into your arteries than your bones. And you don't want calcium in your arteries. So just trying to supplement your way out of a poor diet, yeah, definitely not optimal. And we try to guide people to get it from food. And people who like Miley and Beth and everybody who get it from food, they thrive.
Can you unmute Kathy and ask your question?
Okay, I was just going to make a suggestion to Beth because I also struggle to find calcium. And there's something sweet basil seeds is Sabja in Hindu. If you have an Indian market near you, as we do, they're kind of fun. They kind of gel up like, chia seeds and water. It's kind of a, fun variety for, putting in your tea or something. And if you Google it, they have a lot of calcium and magnesium and stuff.
Mm.
Okay. I
Okay.
probably can order it. It's probably not here in town, but I'll check on that. Sabja.
Uh-huh. Or just sweet basil seeds. I'll post a link. I don't know
Cool.
if it's the best link.
Thank you.
Thanks,
So
Kathy.
Marty, do you have more slide? Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
her hand's going down.
let me so these are the sort of foods that low satiety, get a zero satiety score. This McDonald's big breakfast with pancakes just nails it. And you can imagine just over consuming energy from that. Everything on the Macca's and Pizza Hut and all those fast food restaurants, just you can see, wow, these have been designed, whether they know it or not, to hit the bliss points and be really easy to overeat. So we keep on coming back and spending more money. But what we've done is taken this, extending beyond protein leverage to nutrient leverage to combine everything into a satiety score, which also aligns with nutrient density. So again, we're not trying to get you to live on broccoli rabe and nori and hearts of palm and egg whites, which have got extremely good nutrient density and satiety scores. We just want to take you and move you up the scale. So if you're down here, just start eating more of these foods towards the top right corner and incrementally improve your diet. And similarly, we've done the same thing with 1,750 recipes that we've got. I'll show you in Beth's report. At the end of Beth's report, based on her nutrient fingerprint, we've got a ton of recipes that fill her nutrient gaps precisely, which is super cool to see people using. And to bring it all to landing, high satiety foods are hard to overeat. Low satiety addictive foods are designed to be overeaten. And if you're living in that environment, you're going to find it hard to escape. We've got through question one. Any final questions before we wrap up?
Now's your time, people.
So I think to wrap up, protein leverage, probably the biggest radical thing in nutrition. But I think the next thing is understanding nutrient leverage and how it's not just protein, it's everything that comes together, and giving your body everything it needs more efficiently with less energy is the power punch for nutrition. And great to see so many people on this call who are absolutely thriving doing it. And I'm loving interviewing people. Next week, I'm interviewing Melissa, who's been through a massive journey and is on this mission to become anti-fragile. She's been through a million different diets and it's thriving, and now she's just building strength and becoming superhuman, and she's a real inspiration to me. So it's great to get inside the head of people like Miley and Melissa, and hopefully we'll have Beth on to talk about her type 1 journey. And you know, these people, these stories are a real inspiration to me and everybody else. So I think that's it. Thanks, Laurie. It's been fun. Thanks for showing up, guys. Really appreciate your time, and I'll catch you next week for Melissa.